You gotta give me one thing. I'm a scary judge of talent.
Adolphus Washington back-to-back plays.
The Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Triple Double Podcast. My name's Corey Albertson. Jason Morrow of 270 Hoops is in here as our producer as always. And today we're joined by who I would call a coaching legend and my good friend, someone I've learned a lot from, Coach Wally Vickers.
Hey, thanks for having me and looking forward to being here and talking a little basketball.
Well, we appreciate you being here. So Coach Vickers is currently the head coach at Clark Montessori High School, Division III program in Cincinnati. 32-year veteran of education. Coach has also been at Lakota East for 12 years, was at Sycamore, Hilliard Darby, and Indian Hill, and like I said, is one of the kind of old school coaching legends in Ohio. Is that the list of where you've been?
That's accurate, yes.
There you go. And we've known each other since 2007 when I was a lowly freshman manager at the University of Cincinnati, and you used to bring the Thunderhawks down to team camp every year.
That's right. Those were some competitive camps, and of course, you beat me in that iconic game of horse in the Shoemaker.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I did win a game of horse. It was late night, and you're not beating me in horse if you can't use the bank shot. I'm not a three-point guy, Coach, but if you can't shoot a bank shot, you're not beating me in horse.
Well, you were on that night, so I had to take the L and move on.
You've recovered, though. You're still here. 12 years later.
Yeah.
Well, let's start off the conversation like this. You had a prominent run in the GMC in Cincinnati in the state of Ohio with Lakota East. That's some really good teams, really good players in that district. And you left there, did a retirement from teaching. You're going to be retired from coaching. And you ended up a couple years later taking the Clark job. And you told Mike Dyer, who, if anyone doesn't know, is a really, really good high school sports reporter down here in Cincinnati, that part of the reason of taking the Clark job was based on kind of an epiphany you had driving back one year from the Ohio North-South game. Yeah,
a lot of truth to that. I work with a company, Pro Camps, and we do events and camps, across the nation, and so that's kept me in athletics. But even with that, that's just such a small little sampling. It's just a couple day, small events, and I have maintained the position being the director of the Ohio North-South game. And, just the 1 year group of, there's always an outstanding group of players that are in that game. And man, I drove away that year realizing how much I missed being with high school players on the court, going through the process of working with teams and individual players and just that whole, improvement and watching kids grow. And as I drove back that year, I thought, if it were the right situation, I would absolutely want to do it again. And, the Clark position, when it became available, I thought it might be the right fit. It was convenient for me on a lot of levels. And it's turned out to be true. I mean, I've absolutely loved every second at Clark and just working with our outstanding young men there.
Clark's a little bit of an interesting situation for you. It's different being that it's a, Cincinnati city school, but it's not what some people think, and that there's some really good culture there in the building. It's a different approach to education, kind of like a Walnut Hills or what Gamble Montessori is doing. And those schools are really growing in Cincinnati, and that's got to attract families to the school, whether it's for basketball or not.
Yeah, I mean, Clark has a great reputation, and that was certainly a factor as I looked into it. As you mentioned, the culture of the school. So certainly that was a factor in me being interested in the position.
Right. Well, with Clark, it's very different for you when you look at Sycamore, Lakota East, and from what I know about Hilliard Darby, especially, those are really big Division I schools. Schools that are known for as good as they are in basketball. They're also going to play high level football. different resources. Clark is a different dynamic than what you've coached at before. So when you're dealing with those kids, how have you found that it's different or the same in terms of coaching and just being around those kids?
Well, there was right away a very big difference in the size of the school because my experience is at larger schools. And, one of the great built-in advantages at a big school is just the numbers of potential players that you have, and really leads to a very healthy competitive situation. And, the programs that we had at those schools were, 10-month-a-year programs. We always had things going on in the summer, the fall, the spring. While certainly we had some multi-sport athletes, we also had, student athletes that were just basketball players. So I had to make an adjustment going from that big school and the amount of kids that you have to a D3 school at Clark. And just once you get in the season, from a practice standpoint, one of the advantages of a big school is your practices often on a daily basis can be a lot more competitive than they can be at a smaller school where you just don't have the depth.
Right. And then it's an interesting conference as well. Off the top of the head, it's the only conference in Southwest Ohio, one of the only ones in the state of Ohio, where you've got private schools, you've got a City of Cincinnati school, at least one, and then you've got schools like St. Bernard or Wacom that are small community schools. So it's really interesting league, and you've had to navigate. You've got private, public, city. That's got to be a new experience for you as well.
Yeah, and it brings an interesting dynamic to the league, no doubt about it. And when we got there at Clark, it's been a league that Summit Country Day has, really been the kingpin for a number of years.
They got good alumni.
They have great alumni. I hope you're making all your donations as you should be. But
be right.
Yeah, and so they're a private school. CHCA is a private school with an outstanding athletic program, and then North College Hill and their basketball program has a really good tradition and a community school like you're talking about that puts a really an outstanding basketball team on the floor. So it's a competitive league with an interesting mix of schools.
Well, it's interesting you brought up North College Hill. Clark in many ways, like I said, it's not a typical Cincinnati public like a Walnut Hills is. You want to have your own community. And if you look at what North College Hill does in terms of trying to build basketball from a fan standpoint and people getting excited about it, that's certainly what you guys want to emulate at Clark that is different that a lot of the small city communities don't necessarily have.
Yeah, and it's more of a challenge because our students at Clark come from all over the city of Cincinnati.
Right.
So they're not located right in that Hyde Park, Oakley area. So, when they leave school, it's not always convenient for them to come back and go to a Friday night game. So there are some challenges with that.
Okay. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your career in education. We've had several high school coaches on the podcast, had some guys who are in building, some guys who aren't in building. Your experience, everyone always asks me this question, and I think I might be a little too young to really answer, but how have kids changed over the last couple of decades in terms of just day-to-day life as a basketball coach or as a teacher?
Corey, I think that's a great question, and I don't think kids have changed all that much. The world has changed. Their distractions are certainly different in terms of technology and how they spend their time. There's more things for them to do. There weren't as many options years ago where, hey, the Friday night basketball or football game was something that every student wanted to attend. That's not always the case now. But in terms of teaching and coaching kids, I really don't think they've changed all that much. I think adults have changed in terms of how they deal with them and expectations that they put on them. But, from my standpoint, speaking about being at Clark right now and, the core group of young men that we have playing for us, they bought in. Being a student athlete is important to them. Mm-hmm. And, certainly I think, as a coach doing it for as long as I've done it, you always make adjustments. You change, you certainly grow. Mm-hmm. I don't know if change is the right word, but you grow, you get better at what you do. But there's so many ways. I don't think I've changed at all in terms of what our expectations are of the young men every single day in terms of how they carry themselves, how we expect them to carry themselves in the school, how we expect them to carry themselves on the basketball court. And, Friday night, game night, we all want to win. I want to win as much as anybody. And, but, big picture, that's not our biggest job. Our biggest job is not to make them better players. It's to make them, better people and help them become young men who are going to go on to be successful men, fathers, have successful careers. And so a lot there, but I don't think kids have changed all that much. I'd like to think the adults have changed more than anything.
I tend to hear from high school coaches and college coaches or AAU coaches, in my role regarding parents, and parents are being more difficult. And, I can't speak to how it was in the past with parents, but there certainly is a situation, I think, with kids that get too much pressure put on them. And from my role, it's too many guys pushing a kid to be something they're not. And when you look at a Clark, a North College Hill, a Summit, or, take it even further, sometimes, they're really good right now. But when you have a more average, like a Purcell Marion, a lot of kids go to those schools because they're good basketball players. But if they had gone to a GMC school, a GCL South school, or maybe a Taft, they might not have been able to play. But you go to a Summit, you go to a Clark, and you have an opportunity to play. But the parents still want something that's not there. And as a coach, I think that's got to be a difficult dynamic to measure success, and that you want the kid to continue to get better, to be the best player and mature as a kid. But the parents want all these accolades that just aren't realistic.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And the landscape with basketball has also changed in that, if you went back to, say, the 90s, if you were on a club team, what a lot of people generically call AAU,
Mm-hmm.
you were a select few. Not that many high school players played club basketball. Well, in 2018, last year, and it'll be 2019 this spring and summer, there's a club team on every corner.
Near 100% participation from varsity players.
Right, right. And so with that, then, where I think that impacts the high school is, usually the kids that are on a club team are one of 7 or 8 players. And they're going to pay their money to be on the club team, and they're going to play. They are going to play. And, that's a guarantee. That whereas on a school team, it's not that way. And playing time is not guaranteed. And the club coach, they're in a business in some cases, and they're trying to get kids. They want kids to sign up every year to be on their club. And so their expectations are different. And I'm not knocking club basketball.
And you've got the practice dynamic as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They just play a lot of games. And, I know some of them do have some practices, but, I think that's changed. And so parents will see their son or daughter on a club team, and, it's different. The expectations are different. And then they want the same role when they come to the school team. And that's often not the case.
Well, that's one of the things I don't think there's a ton of positives, maybe just one regarding the NCAA changes to the recruiting rules. But I think one that's good is you're going to see less AAU weekends in terms of total tournaments teams play. And while that might not sound great for AAU teams, it means the weekends that you play are going to be quality events, and you're going to get rid of the quantity of events where there's some that are just bad basketball.
A lot. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's going to be interesting how that plays out with those 2 weekends in June where they have to be with their high school team. So, we'll see how that goes this summer. And hopefully, as you say, the events that are left for club will be quality events.
Mm-hmm. Well, going back to the teaching thing, what I wanted to talk about is, recently been really fortunate. I think our podcast is slowly growing here, and had 2 guys hit me up regarding coaching and what they can learn. And one thing that I thought was interesting and you could talk about is, how do you manage as a teacher who's in the building every day, relationships with basketball players as a teacher and a coach? And how does that kind of differentiate from how you manage relationships with students who aren't in the basketball program.
So, basketball was my passion. I absolutely loved being a high school teacher. And, at a big school, it was really, I felt critical to be a presence there with the players. I mean, they knew that I was in the hallway. They knew that I was just aware of what was going on in the school and the school environment. And so, there's that piece. But then at the same time, with Corey, if you were my basketball player and I had you in class, I would say, and I could say this with 100% accuracy, I could go through a whole school year with you in the classroom and never one time am I going to reference basketball with you in the classroom. Because, I'm going to expect a lot of you as a basketball player, but I also don't want you, when you come into my classroom, to have that on you as well. In my classroom, you ought to be able to just be a student. And when the bell rings and in between class, that's another story. But I want to have a relationship that, hey, in the classroom, I'm this person to you. I'm your U.S. history teacher. I'm whatever. So
day-to-day coaching, not a huge difference. Day-to-day teaching, no difference. But day-to-day being around, building the culture of the basketball program off the court, huge opportunity to be in the building.
Absolutely. I know for how we did things at a big school, I would not want to be a coach at a big school if I were not in the building, because I don't think you can get it done effectively. I would want to be in that building at a big school.
Yeah, and it's getting harder and harder. You see, so many shifts, and that's one thing I talk to guys about that I think people don't realize is when guys switch jobs in high school, they've got to have a position there, and that can become a really interesting dynamic in terms of guys switching jobs.
It's a huge factor. It is a huge factor because, high school coaching doesn't pay the bills. And
right.
These guys are educators, and they're usually educators first. And that's what good coaches are. They're good teachers. So, people talk about the jobs and there's always going to be movement. But for someone to truly make a move at a big school, it has to come with a teaching position. And in the day and age we are now in education, there's many school districts, if once you have so many years as a teacher, they're not going to pay you all your years. I was really fortunate when I made the moves that I did, but there's just not a lot of school districts that'll do that.
Well, I can think of at least one GMC school. I don't think they have this policy anymore. Well, I know they don't have this policy anymore, but at the time they had a policy when there was a coaching change on the varsity level. They first had to offer the job to an assistant who was already in the building because that's how much it was prioritized to be in the building. So it seems with the bigger schools, it's almost a requirement, even if it's not written in stone, it tentatively is.
Yeah, a principal of a building certainly understands the importance of that. And if they don't have that coach in the building, it's going to be problematic for them at some point in time. So having somebody in the building just helps for the whole school environment and school spirit and just the total, what they're looking to build in that high school.
Well, going forward with that, I can remember early into getting into the media scouting side, having my Cincinnati website. I attended a couple of your practices with East, and one thing I really learned watching you guys with East was it was very serious. Once kids could have as much fun as they wanted to after school until they stepped into the gym, it became very serious. It became, we understand what we're here to do, and to quick have some urgency getting dressed and whatnot. And then once practice started early on, this is early season practice. You guys are doing a lot of drill work, getting guys in prime basketball shape. And it seemed to be a very player-led practice where you had seniors or juniors who'd been around the block who held the younger kids accountable. And that's something that I really think has continued with the East culture and been, when you were there and now with Clint there, one of the reasons that thing's been successful. So how did you really go and create that? And let me prompt it by saying, you're definitely, I use the word term old school before. That's definitely your coaching style and the perception of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with practices, I always want our practices to be run at a quick tempo, whether it's the drill, whether it's the transition from drill to drill. The game of basketball is a quick tempo game. And I prefer to play faster, whether it's offensively or defensively. And so I think how you plan practices, that's going to reflect how you play on game night. So a sense of urgency about how we do things is always important. And yeah, at East, I mean, really just thrilled for Clint and their whole staffs. They just won the GMC championship and how, success is perpetuated there. So really proud of that. And we had great leaders. I mean, we had just tremendous leaders, kids that came through the program. We're talking about, big school program. Well, at Lakota East, our players were, 90% of the time the product of kids who were with us at fourth grade camp, fifth grade camp, sixth grade, played for us in junior high. So they knew our program and the expectations of the program. And, I don't care what level, high school, collegiate, pro, if you don't have player leadership, you're not going to be very good. So I think you have to have a plan for that. And we've always had a plan to have players hold people accountable. And it's about leadership development.
But one thing, you certainly have had good players, but one thing I think that's been a theme with guys that you've had, now guys that Clint had, and I'm sure with guys that you have at Clark, is you've got some young guys who've come in and, like most kids that age who are really successful in middle school basketball and have been told how great they are. They've got a big head, and you've got to break them down. And your style of breaking them down is going to be aggressive. I mean, you're going to get in their face, especially on the defensive end. What's your kind of approach to breaking those kids down, and then how do you build them back up? Because some guys that maybe gave you problems or were difficult to get to buy into as young kids, there's been a lot of them that have gone through East and other programs that have become really good high school players by their junior, senior year, and then really good college players and are now getting into coaching themselves.
They're kids. And, at some point when they start playing for us, I will absolutely, tell them that, playing basketball at Clark, to where I am now is, hey, I can tell you, this is not for everybody. And I will tell them, this is not for everybody. And you've got to decide if it's for you. And if you love basketball and you want to get better and you want to be part of something bigger than yourself, then this is who we are. This is how we're going to do it. And, that aggressive coaching, you can't just be that way with a young man from day one. You've got to have a relationship with kids. And, we are a certain way on the floor in practice time, but you know what? I get to know my players, and it's something that I've always taken pride in, and I want to know who they are and take an interest in them off the floor and how they're doing. And because you can't just be hard on a kid and, what people call in-your-face coaching if you don't have a relationship with them, because they're not going to buy into that. So, I try to build that relationship, and, and then I will also tell them, look, we could be the type of program, I could be the type of coach that, Corey, when you make a mistake, I say, okay, hold it up, Corey, come here. And I'm going to put my arm around you and say, now here's what you're supposed to do. And, but that's not really how we practice. That's not the tempo we practice at. So I'm going to apologize to you now if my voice is going to get a little bit elevated, and I'm going to communicate with you across the court. I'm going to say, Corey, this is what we need to, this is how we need to do it. And we're going to move on. And hopefully we have a good enough relationship that you can, as a player, handle being coached and move on to the next play and maybe not repeat the mistake.
Well, I think anybody that knows you well, and I think I do, and I think talking to a lot of your former players that I know, they're going to tell you that if you're a fan watching the game, you have a perception of Wally Vickers as a coach. If you attend to practice, you really have a perception of Wally Vickers as a coach. But if you know him off the court, you know the way he is with his guys, you're actually kind of soft off the court. You're a little bit of a teddy bear with your guys, and, they all love you. It's about more than basketball. And, I think it's about taking those younger players and having them eventually look up to the older guys and say, well, if this guy who's a really good senior could make it through, I could make it through. And if he is this good of a player, bought into it, well, I better buy into it if I'm ever going to play. And one guy I know really well is a guy named James Boyd. His son Mike played for you, and he always tells me, I'm glad my kid played for Wally, because Wally didn't cater to him being a really good player. He always pushed him, and that made him, become what he became.
Yeah, and you bring up something. I mean, I always something we had a plan for, and you try to do is you're really, and it's about developing leadership, right? It's about developing them to be men, and once they get to that status in your program, we would always make it a point to have them talk to the younger players, whether it's talk to them individually, whether it's be talking to the team, or going to see the junior high teams play, and then going to the locker room afterwards and say, hey, here's one of our senior players, and let them say something to the team. I mean, that's how you build a program. That's how you maintain a program. And that's, it's a leadership thing. And then, to your point, it's how you get the younger guys, because you want the younger players to look at those older guys and aspire to be them. And so that's all part of the program development.
That reminds me of something. I don't know. This is in the back of my mind, I guess. I can't tell you how many East games I've gone to over the last 10 years with either you or Clint as the head coach. And I swear every single game, every halftime, there's a third grade Lakota teams playing against each other. There's a fourth grade Lakota teams playing against each other. And with the big public districts like that, it's got to be important to start young, and to build the culture from the very bottom.
Absolutely, it is. You want them to aspire to be there, and that was a thing. We'd bring them in the locker room at in between the games, and let them see the locker room, and have them shake the hands of the players, and I mean, geez, Corey, I mean, and the one thing I'm thinking about with that is, Cincinnati, Ohio, there's outstanding public school leagues, there's outstanding private school leagues, and some outstanding private schools. So you want to make sure with your younger players that are in your district that they know that you want them. And you don't want any tentacles from any outside programs coming in and taking them away from your school.
Well, the districts, particularly the northern suburbs, like the Lakota district with 2 schools with Mason. I mean, those are schools that have attracted the private schools have certainly gotten a lot of their kids over the years. And I think in the heyday, or not even the heyday, what's currently at East is I think East deals with that less. And that's certainly going to be a huge advantage and a factor. I mean, if we're just being honest, that's a huge factor in winning. And that's not just Cincinnati. That goes for Dayton and for Cleveland as well. Columbus a little less with their public-private dynamic, but it's huge down here.
Absolutely, it's huge. And look, if you are a parent and you have a talented athlete, and you've got a choice on where to go to school, and hey, let's say you live in a public school district that doesn't have a strong athletic program. I don't think anybody could blame you for saying, you know what, I want my daughter, my son to go to a school that, has success and cares about athletics, So if you have that option, and you're not happy with, you don't think the public school cares about it, I can't fault anybody for doing that. What we always just said is, look, we have an outstanding academic situation at our school. As I was at Lakota East in the GMC and was at Sycamore in the GMC. We know we are outstanding academically. That is undeniable. So we've just got to do a great job with our athletic program. And, in both situations at East and Sycamore, their basketball programs were not good when we started there. And, that changed. And that way, then when a parent said, hey, I've got a talented son, we play in the GMC. It is one of the premier D1 athletic conferences in the state of Ohio. So we did not want athletics to be a reason why somebody would take their kid from our school.
That makes sense. And, Lakota's had their ups and downs with some levies and some tax things to make those athletics difficult, but they still field good teams. And, there is a great culture there. And I think when you look at like a Lakota East or a Mason in terms of the way they run the program, for as much credit as guys like Carl Kramer gets at Muller, Dan Fleming got at LaSalle, those guys like what you did, and then Clint at East, what Greg Richards does at Mason, those guys don't get Mike Price at Oak Hills. Those guys don't get enough credit because you're taking a different dynamic and still building a great program that's successful year in and year out. And some years you'll have the talent to win 17, 18 games, and some years you might go 11-9, but you still got the most out of your group.
And that is, absolutely one of the challenges at being at a big public school, especially in the GMC. And people talk about recruiting classes for collegiate success. Well, at the high school level, what we always said at East is we could never have two bad classes. Mm-hmm. We can't, if we have two bad classes in a row, then at some point, we're not going to be successful in the 7:30 game on Friday night.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Well, the last thing I want to talk to you about, if we can go off basketball for a second, is, and then I'll let you go because I know you got a big game tomorrow. But you've got a unique backstory outside of basketball. It's been no secret on this podcast. I had a brother who was 18, or have a brother who was 18, and has gone through a cancer, couple chemo sessions and whatnot. And fortunately, he's doing much better now. But you got a chance to talk to him, and as well as my father and myself one day, and it's extremely inspirational for him. He learned a lot, and I know you believe in that type of work, and there's a lot of similarities there with coaching and teaching. And how do you try and really kind of help guys outside of just teaching and basketball?
Well, really a pleasure to meet your brother and your father that day. And my story is I am a cancer survivor, and that is not anything unique. Once a family is in that situation, all of a sudden they realize how many. No family is immune from cancer. Everybody has a story, and I was afflicted at a very young age, like your brother, and it was, it had a lot to do with I think who I am today. And when I went through my time, I found a couple people reached out to me, and after I got through my situation, I just made a decision that I was, as I heard about people and going through a similar situation, that I was not going to be shy about, reaching out, making a phone call, meeting them. Sometimes they wanted to, sometimes they didn't. But just, and the conversations went all over the place. It's hard to say where they're going to go. It's hard to predict, but just wanted to let people know that there's a lot of survivors out there. Everybody's got a story, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And, with your brother and with so many, when you're living in that moment, sometimes it is hard to see beyond the treatment and then the recovery.
Well, one of the things you said, maybe the first thing you said, but very early in that conversation, which I, kind of sat in the background, was I think you said to him, "Welcome to the world of survivors." And I think I always just thought, I tell him that sometimes, like, you remember, Wally said that to you, because I think that's such a great outlook. And again, that coincides very much with a positive mindset that you want to have in basketball, or, anything in life where you're trying to reach a goal.
Absolutely. And to like your brother, to get hit with that at that young age, I mean, my goodness, it can be earth shattering in the moment. And, so, you can have all the family support in the world, but, again, it's just always been my goal, if I can be supportive in any way, shape, or form to anybody, that I've tried to do that. And then what I hope is, gosh, that they pay it forward. That then whenever they're through their situation, that, years down the line, that they will probably do that as well. And I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, it's just great for perspective. And I think that's one of the things that my brother had that really helped him get through it was, in visiting him when he was in the hospital, one thing I would tell him is, well, at least you're 18, and there are so many people on his floor that were older, that were afflicted, that are going through a much more difficult time, because physically your body's just not going to recover as well as when you're young. And I think he was able to keep that positive outlook, and, your advice and support was certainly instrumental. And, it's something that I always will appreciate, as will, all the members of my family. So wanted to really take this forum to thank you for that.
Hey, it was absolutely my pleasure, and glad that Jason is doing well.
All right. Well, last thing, then we'll let you go here. High school season's ending. Year 2 at Clark. You guys have an opportunity. So tell us what's on store for this weekend.
Well, we got Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy, and we are tied with them for first place in the league. So this is the final game of the year, and so the winner takes all. Brian Lahan, this is how old I am. Brian played for me at Sycamore, and he is an outstanding coach, and they've just had a tremendous season. They've got 3 guys that we've really got to do a great job D'ing up tomorrow. So they're gonna play their style, and we're gonna try to be disruptive and play our style. And glad it's at home. Should be it's going to be a great atmosphere, and I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Well, my little trash talk to you guys and CHCA is enjoy it, because my boys at Summit, we're going to be back. We're not going to, we didn't have the best year. It's okay. Coach Cosgrove didn't have the horses this year, but we're going to be back. So win it now. That's all I'm telling you, because we're coming.
I appreciate that very much.
So, all right, guys. Well, that was Coach Wally Vickers, again, longtime veteran coach in the Cincinnati area as well as the Columbus area. For Jason Moore, I'm Corey Albertson. Thanks for listening to the Triple Double Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by PlayEasy.com. For players, coaches, or casual athletes looking to book a sports facility, as well as owners and managers of sports facilities, PlayEasy.com is the new one-stop site for streamlined services. If you're looking for a place to practice, play, host your tournament, camp, or other, simply go to PlayEasy.com and create a booking request for your area. Your request will go out to surrounding facilities who will respond with their best offer. Once you receive the offer that best fits your needs, book the facility and you're ready to play. For facility owners and managers, PlayEasy puts the power in your hands to maximize the usage and visibility of your facility. Register your facility for free today at PlayEasy.com. PlayEasy.com is the booking site built by athletes, coaches, and facility managers, and is proud to help bring you the Triple Double Podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Anago Cleaning Systems. Are you tired of struggling in a dead-end job? If so, Anago Cleaning Systems has what you're looking for: an opportunity to go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. With franchising opportunities available for as little as a $2,500 down payment, purchasing an Anago franchise has never been easier. Once you own your Anago franchise, you're licensed to clean commercial facilities all around the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus areas with the support of Anago's sales, quality control, operational, and accounting staff. Call 513-332-0033 today for your opportunity to be your own boss and grow your own commercial cleaning company under the guidance of Anago's proven and successful system. Again, call 513-332-0033 to learn more. With Anago, your future starts today.